Alright, so today I'm going to show you guys how to add a receptacle in a commercial setting. This will be a little bit different if you're doing it in a residential setting. The boxes will be different, the wire will be different, connectors will be different. Anyways, I went ahead and started out by removing the paper off of the wall where these people wanted this receptacle added. Using a magnetic ball stud finder, I went ahead and found the studs and made sure that I would not be cutting into those or near those. Tried to match this heater, try to match this little heater thing as best as I could, but the plate was taller than it, so I figured it didn't really matter. So I got my height that I wanted to pick for my plate, and then I held up the box with the level, traced the box at that height. Once you get your box marked out, you can go ahead and grab your jab saw or your multi-tool. In this case, I had a battery-powered multi-tool, and I went ahead and started to cut along the lines. And then once I got that done, I just knocked out the hole. And from there, I went ahead and grabbed my jab saw to make the final touches. Luckily, that little flex I could push out of the way, otherwise I would be in big trouble. I think it goes without saying, but obviously you can't put a box in the wall if there's an obstacle behind the wall. So for the finishing touches, I cut the left corner and the right corner out because of the screws on the box. Also cut the top and the bottom spots for the screws as well. And then I did a little test fit. It was a little bit tight, so I shaved the top because there was some more screws. Otherwise it would have been perfect. And then it was good to go. As you can see, it fits in there nice and flush. Once it was flush, I went ahead and took it back out so I could get my wire down the wall. I started out with a drill, cutting a small round hole. I drilled my hole, and then off screen took my glow rod or my fish stick and pushed that down the wall and grabbed it with my hand and pulled it out. A little bit easier said than done. Once I got that done, I went ahead and grabbed my wire and taped it on the end of the fish stick. Several wraps of tape on the top and the bottom, just in case you have to pull the wire back out of the wall, that it's not going to get stuck on anything. Once you get that all tied on, go ahead and start pulling your wire down the wall. Kind of wiggle it up and down to be able to pull it. And then once you get it down to the hole, you are good to go. I went ahead and cut it off afterwards, just so I didn't have to untape it or anything like that. And then once you cut that off, you can go ahead and start stripping the wire and making it up on the back side of the receptacle. I used a little wire spinner right here to take that off. Once you go ahead and get that off, go ahead and wrap your redundancy ground around the outside of the wire if you're using hospital grade wire like I am. Then remove the paper from your ground, hot and neutral if you have it on all three of those. And then I went ahead and pulled the wire up a little bit. Once I did that, don't forget your anti-short if you're using MC. Skip that step if you're using Romex. Pulled the wire up a little bit so I could get it into the box. And then I went ahead and shoved my box in and pulled the wire down through the hole, because in this case I'm using a reverse MC connector instead of a normal MC connector or a 2-screw MC connector. So this will be a little bit different. If you're using Romex, you're just going to pull your wire into your box. Obviously you're going to want to use a plastic box if you're doing this in a residential setting. So I put on my reverse MC connector, and then I pulled the wire up a little bit because, like I said, I pulled the wire down through the hole. So it needed to pull the wire back up because it's a reverse MC connector. So that needed to be pushed up to the top of the box. I used a screwdriver to kind of pop it up there because it was kind of stuck. So I used my screwdriver and got that nice and tight to the top of the box and snapped into the 1/2-inch hole. Then I kind of poked a little bit because my hole wasn't completely cut out for my top screw hole. So I punctured that a little bit with my big screwdriver. And then I took my battle chips and I went ahead and shoved those in and grabbed my channel locks or my Knipex pipe pliers and went ahead and folded those over. Usually use needle nose pliers, but I had these on hand, so I went ahead and used these. Fold over your battleships nice and tight. I usually fold it over halfway and then fold the rest of the battleship back over flat. So if you're wondering about that. So I went ahead and did my second battleship for the left side of the box and repeated that same process, pushing it into the wall. You're going to want to put the short side of the battleship down, so in case it ever falls, it's not going to completely fall out and into the wall or anything like that. And then I folded over the battleships once again until it was nice and tight to the wall, and then your box will be nice and tight and staying into the wall and won't be falling out or going anywhere because of these battleships. If you've never seen how they work, they're pretty cool, but that'll be for another video. After that, I went ahead and took my ground screw and tightened that in with the Phillips and flipped it over onto the flat and tightened it extra tight. And then from there, I went ahead and stripped out my MC wire. Obviously, it's not connected to the power right now, so I'm good to go and make this up. I'm just working my way backwards, so I'm working not tied into the power first, so it's not hot or anything like that. As you can see, the wire is still laying on the ground as it's coming out of the ceiling. So I went ahead and tied in the grounds to the grounds, the whites to the whites, and the blacks to the blacks, or the neutrals to the neutrals, and the hots to the hots. So in this case, I'm using the lollipop receptacles as I'm in a hospital setting, which is required. So I'll go ahead and remove the ears from the receptacle. And like I said, I already got the lollipop tied in, and I just snapped in the lollipop receptacle to the back of it. It just clips in. And then from there, I went ahead and folded my wires back into the box and screwed the receptacle into the box that I obviously just put into the wall, and make sure this is level. So once you're done screwing in the receptacle, make sure you use your level and make sure it is level, and make sure it's nice and tight so it doesn't fall out or anything. If your box is a little bit crooked and your receptacle is not 100% straight, you can kind of tap the box over a little bit if you have some wiggle room. And then from there, go ahead and put on your cover and make sure you line up your screws up and down, otherwise you're not a real electrician. And then from there, double check and make sure your plate is straight as well, so that way it looks good. And don't forget to label your receptacle plates if you're in a setting where it needs to be labeled. I would hate to forget about that. From there, tying this into the power, went ahead and came up to the junction box. So in this case, I'm tying my wire into a junction box. Your setting might be a little bit different, but you're probably going to be using a junction box if you're tapping off an existing circuit, but your situation might look a little bit different. So I already put the MC connector on the end of my wire, and in this case I'm using a 2-screw MC connector, so I had to use a lock nut and tighten that from both sides to make sure it's nice and tight. So once I got that tied in, I went ahead and started the process to tie this in. But obviously, before you start any of this, you're going to want to make sure that the power is off. In this case, I locked it out in the panel. And after you got all that taken care of, strip the ends of your 3 wires, and then tie in your grounds to your grounds, and then your neutrals to your neutrals, and your hots to your hots. I always like to do a little bit of a pull test, and I like to twist the wire nut with my strippers to make sure it's extra tight. But like I said, make sure to do the pull test on the wires. Make sure none of the wires are going to come out of the wire nut. And then from there, you're going to be good to go to fold your wires back into your junction box. In this case, I'm using stranded, so I like to do a circular loop and then fold those wires into the box and then put on the cover. If you have more solid wires, you can kind of fold the wires up and down like an accordion, whatever your preference is on style to make it look nice, or however you get it to get in the box. Go ahead and do that. Tighten down your screws on your junction box, and then from there I went ahead and strapped my wire back. If you're just kind of fishing this down a wall, you might not need to do this, but obviously my wire had to go across the wall, so I went ahead and strapped that down using the screws and MC straps. That's what I did. I just kind of took the screws out of the sheetrock that was already there and then tightened them down with my MC straps. It was a little bit loose, so I pulled it tight to make it look extra nice. And then from there, go ahead and clean up any mess that you may have made on the ground. I used some Clorox wipes because I didn't have any water or anything like that, and paper towels, so I just went ahead and wiped that up. Make sure to clean the wall if you made any marks. Close up your ceiling tiles. And then from there, go ahead and turn your power back on. And once you come back, it should be good to go. You can double check the top one if you want to. That's going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you guys.